Big question that we're asking. Did staff at Seattle's Garfield High School woo a vulnerable but promising Texas athlete to play here for one season?
Yeah, and then only abandon him and then send him home once that season was over?
That's the question being raised by a front-page investigation this week in the Seattle Times. Texas athlete's story spurs recruiting probe at Garfield.
The fallout continues this morning. Times reporter Claudia Rowe actually broke this story. She's here. This is a wide-ranging investigation. You did a lot of work here. Would you kind of encapsulate what it is that you uncovered in all of this?
Sure. I thought that I was going to write a story about homeless students, and I found some homeless students, but they weren't what I expected. They were not living in a tent on the side of the interstate or anything. These were kids who had been encouraged or flown up here, in fact, sort of under the promise of athletic glory. They say that they were flown up by the Garfield Athletic Department in some fashion. And we are still working on this story. This is just the very beginning. But essentially, one of these two young men played football. He's a running back and played for the Garfield football team this past fall. They had a very good season. And then at the end of the season, he was flown home for Thanksgiving under the impression that he'd be brought back. And then suddenly when he was there, he says, it was, oh no, we don't have the money to bring you back, sorry. And he got himself back up here with his friend. Both of them had originally been flown to Seattle, and they both showed up back here again, kind of not knowing what to do or where to go, and then they surely were homeless once again. They had bounced around in different homes of different team parents, and I believe a coach, not a football team coach, but another member of the athletic staff, sort of couch surfing in the term of art that is used now, though I don't think very indicative of the lack of stability for this kid. Really, nobody was kind of watching over him and guiding him academically. There was really virtually no adult oversight.
That is terrifying because as a kid, as a teen, you assume that adults have your best interest at heart. What is the school, what is the district saying about this? I'm assuming that they're aware of your story and that they've read it, and I would imagine there's a response of some kind.
The school is being very quiet. The district is indicating great concern. They have said that to me more than once, that they are very concerned, and they are investigating. They have hired an outside investigator, and they are moving on it. My impression is that this may be an investigation that has multiple layers. So the case of these two young men from Texas, that's one thing. There might be more here than that.
This is just the beginning of what could be something else. It's what you said to us off the air here is this is less a sports story and more about the potential of adults taking care of or taking advantage of maybe vulnerable youth.
You know, I'm an education reporter. I spend a lot of my time looking at education policy. So that's the way I come at this. And it's one thing to look at the rules, the rules that govern high school sports and say, were they bent or broken in this or that case? Okay. But there is a deeper story here, and there are a lot of people who will say, you know, we're just giving a kid an opportunity. Well, okay, well then give them an opportunity, you know, then provide sort of the tutoring, the guidance, the academic oversight. It looks from at this early stage like it was more like using the kid for his talents, but with very little concern about anything else. So what kind of opportunity really is that?
Is this at all indicative of a pattern that is happening increasingly, or are we just hearing about it? Because this is not the first time we've heard about recruiting issues of some kind with a local school. We had a story, I believe it was just last year, about Bellevue High School and Bellevue High School's football team. Do you see this as something that is symptomatic of a larger issue, perhaps here or nationally even? It's
a national story, and it's not a new story, as you say. I just saw an investigation out of New Jersey, very similar. There, in the New Jersey case, kids were being, I think, flown in from out of the country to play. In this case, obviously, kids from Texas. I've heard about kids from Oregon, not necessarily Garfield, but another Seattle school. It is an old story, but it is a deeply concerning story because, once again, it is in whose interest, who's winning here, really. You know, I suppose you could make an argument that you're giving the kid, a kid of little means, a shot toward maybe a college scholarship. You could make that argument, but you're not going to get that scholarship unless there's an academic component as well. And if you're just using the kid for their sports talent, there's not going to be anything else.
We only have a couple more seconds, but what's next here?
What's next is the district looking deeper, I think, and probably I'll be looking deeper as well. I'd like to know what kind of oversight there really is. My impression is that the governing body, the Washington Interscholastic Athletic Association, known as the WIAA, is supposed to be the oversight body, particularly looking at kids who are listed as homeless youth, which is a federal designation. Homeless students is a federal designation. And the only time they really examine what's behind that designation is if somebody raises a complaint. So it's kind of the schools policing themselves. And clearly, that's not working so well.
We look forward to seeing where this story takes us, so we will definitely keep in contact with you. Seattle Times reporter Claudia Rowe, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on.